The government's unveiled its reno job on Labour's flagship KiwiBuild policy. The target to build 100,000 houses in the next decade is gone. Instead, the government will build as many houses as it can, as fast as it can. $400 million from the KiwiBuild budget will be diverted to a progressive home ownership scheme, like shared equity. The deposit needed for a government-backed mortgage will fall from 10 to 5%, and the asset test for second-time round buyers has been demoed altogether. There's now no limit on the number of HomeStart grants buyers can access as long as they all live in the house together. I asked Housing Minister Megan Woods what's wrong with having the target.
The target was producing some perverse outcomes, that the right houses in the right place weren't the primary consideration. It was around quantity and trying to reach those targets, and that isn't what we should be trying to achieve. So what the emphasis needs to be on of making sure that we are building houses in places that are well suited to KiwiBuild buyers or first home buyers, and that there is demand for them. And we've seen in some of the recent developments like Monarch and Wellington, the Monarch apartments in Wellington and Northcote in Auckland, that actually demand has far exceeded supply.
So who's responsible for those perverse outcomes? Who made the decisions to build them in areas where there was no demand?
Well, that's where the early development agreements were, and it very much was about how we're going...
But someone signed them or rubber-stamped them, though,
Absolutely.
didn't they, Minister? So who's that on?
Well, I mean, that was both at an officials level and at a political level. But look, we make no bones about this, that today is about clearing the decks, that we didn't make all the right decisions. KiwiBuild hasn't operated in the way that we needed it to in order fulfilling what we want to do about increasing opportunities for home ownership for New Zealanders. So we're having the courage to call time on that and say that actually we have to change some things at this point.
OK, so you have said that the targets were over-ambitious. Yes?
Mm-hmm. They were, and more seriously, they were producing perverse outcomes.
So does that mean that it was the policy that was flawed and not anything that Phil Twyford did?
Well, I think one of the things that that we need to keep sight of, that the policy intent that sits there, which is about getting more New Zealanders into homes and increasing home ownership opportunities for New Zealand, remains absolutely there. But yes, the targets were a serious and are a serious impediment to doing what we need to do, and that is about making sure that we're getting the right houses in the right place for first home buyers.
OK, so at the moment you're stuck with a number of houses that are in the wrong place, and you're going to put them on the open market. How many are we talking about here?
So we're talking about, there's 211, sorry, I'm just shuffling through my papers here. There's so I can get this absolutely right. 211 houses in Wanaka, 175 in Te Kaupata and 75 in Canterbury. So they're the ones that we'll be putting onto the open market. They're not well suited to first home buyers, but we do know that there is demand for these properties when you open them up to all buyers.
Are you going to have to take a haircut on those houses?
Look, we haven't taken a haircut on any KiwiBuild houses to date, and the advice that I have from
are they?
No, but the advice I've had from officials, of course, this is a conversation that I've had with officials, that we're not expecting to be able to take a haircut. So if we take the example of Wanaka, that is actually a development where over a third, so there's non-KiwiBuild houses there as well as KiwiBuild, and the non-badged KiwiBuild houses have sold. In fact, of the 1,000 houses, well over 300, over a third of them have been sold, and that is a staged development. They're not all built yet. So what we know is there is demand. They're just not homes that are well suited to first home buyers.
Yeah, so you've missed the mark. They're not affordable
Absolutely.
housing for Kiwis who want their first home. You are going to put $400 million into a progressive home ownership scheme.
Sorry, Lisa, can I just go back there in terms of the affordability still is there. They are still built at the KiwiBuild caps. They're just not in an area where there is a lot of first home buyer demand for those homes. But yes, absolutely, we did miss the mark, and that is why we're saying that we need to recycle that money back into projects where we know there is first home buyer demand, KiwiBuild buyer demand.
So you're going to invest $400 million into a progressive home ownership scheme like shared equity, and this is to get more low-income New Zealanders into home ownership. What income level would a household need to sustain that? You must have done some projection work.
Look, we've done some very preliminary work, and we've been working with organisations that are currently working in this space, like the Housing Foundation and Habitat for Humanity. But we haven't finalised any of the design options. There's a range of options there, and that's why we've said that this will benefit between 2,500 and 4,000 people, because exactly the question you're asking me we need to finalise that.
How can you be sure about those numbers, though, Minister, if you don't have modelling? How can you be sure that it would enable even those people to get into it?
Because what I'm saying is that those numbers will depend on where we sit within the income levels, and their final design decisions that have to be made. And what I've said is I will be making those final decisions and taking that piece of work back to Cabinet before the end of the year, and we'll have the scheme up and running next year.
So what do you consider to be low income? Because your press release says this is about getting low income families into houses. So what's your benchmark for low income?
Well, it's usually below the median income. So what we know is that Habitat for Humanity, for example, have a scheme where actually they work with families who are on 60% of the median income in terms of getting them into homes. But one of the problems, I mean, these are great schemes, but they're very small scale. We're talking hundreds of people. What we're talking about with this fund is actually about the quantum shift of actually getting thousands of New Zealanders into home ownership through the use of a fund like this. So that's really one of the big shifts. Yes, we're making the technical changes that we need to KiwiBuild, which is all about the supply side, but in terms of equipping more Kiwis to have the opportunity for home ownership and giving them a chance at home ownership, that's the really exciting stuff that we're doing today.
Nothing you have announced today seems to be aimed at increasing the number of houses built. They're measures that help people get a mortgage or lessen the deposit that they need, but what about actually increasing the supply of houses?
Well, what we know is that we have a number of KiwiBuild homes that are coming down the pipeline. That I think one of the things that is really worth noting, that we've been in government for 2 years. It was only at this point in the electoral cycle that the first Labor government started getting people into state houses. So what we know is the large-scale developments, the likes of Unitech, some of the big Crown land opportunities are taking time to come on stream. But what we do know is in that KiwiBuild pipeline that we've got 9,000 odd houses that are coming down the line at this. This is about a government that remains committed not only to helping people into increasing opportunities around home ownership through increasing the support we give people, but we are addressing the supply side too.
You've reneged on a really significant election promise, and people will wonder if they can trust you when it comes to other policy promises that you've made.
We are not reneging on any election promise.
100,000 houses in 10 years? Wasn't that your promise?
We are still committed to being involved in the supply of houses in New Zealand. We remain as committed as to that as any day that we've been talking about it. What I'm not going to do is be completely bloody-minded about keeping some targets that are producing perverse outcomes. What I want to concentrate on is making sure that we're delivering houses in the affordable range that New Zealanders have a shot at home ownership. This is a problem a long time in the making. It's been since the 1990s that governments have taken active roles in home ownership in New Zealand. We're trying to turn that around.
Minister,
and look, we're the first to front up and say it hasn't worked in the way we needed it to.
Minister, do you not like the idea of targets because that is a level of accountability? People can see whether you've made them or not.
Look, I have no problem with targets if they're productive, but when I see targets that are driving perverse outcomes that mean we're not actually doing the things that we need to do to address the real problem, then no, I'm not going to keep them for the sake of pleasing political commentators. What I'm interested in doing is making sure that we're building homes that first home buyers and second chance buyers, KiwiBuild buyers, want and need and are able to purchase. That is our responsibility as a government, and that is my responsibility as Minister.
Any changes?
And look, I'm happy to front up every month, and I will, with transparent reporting around what we have done.
Minister, before you go, how's about a target for when you're going to have this progressive home ownership scheme up and running?
Next year.
January? February?
Next year. But obviously timelines will all be spelt out in the further work that I'll be taking through this year.
And that's the Housing Minister, Megan Woods.